Thank you all for listening today. I have a really excellent guest on the show. If you are a big fan of Marvel Comics, covers, Spider-Man, Deadpool, and now especially some Marvel Legends action figure boxes, then you're definitely going to know the artistry of David Nakayama. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us today. How are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Of course, yeah. In talking with you over Instagram and such, I'm glad that we've been able to connect and that you even want to come on and talk about this sort of thing.
Talking about toys? I mean, yeah.
Oh, it's the
I'm
it's
in.
the
I'm in.
worst thing. It's the worst thing in the world, I tell you. I kind of set you up, but for those of you that are listening, not too familiar, who are you? Why are you here today? What's your deal?
I draw stuff, I
There we
guess.
go. Interview's
Yeah.
over. We know.
Yeah. What else do you need to know? No,
That's perfect.
I've since I was a little kid, I just, loved drawing, and eventually I figured out that comics, and video games were sort of my bag and the thing I wanted to participate in, and so I've worked for Marvel a lot on covers in the last few years. Recently started up with Hasbro, although I guess we're into about the 25th or 30th project at this point, so I guess not super new, but anyway, it's all really fun stuff. I love doing it, love doing video games, magazines, anything really. It's all just fun to me.
The thing that strikes me about your artwork, let's say, in a sense of, for even like starting it off like Marvel Legends, and even drawing your eye to comic books, especially in this day and age, it has a very fun element. You incorporate, like you did those Venom. Oh, you got the like the cereal boxes. You have like Batman
Yeah.
and Catwoman. You invoke a lot of modern pop culture with your art while also being a little bit retro sometimes, which is very cool. And I think it works, especially with action figures.
Yeah,
Even yeah.
any chance I get to pull in a gag, like
Hmm.
that is just, solid gold. People appreciate a joke. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
the cover could be beautifully drawn or, whatever, but if you can add other layers on top of it, like sex appeal, like humor, like it just makes the experience that much deeper for the person looking at the art. So I would say that is why Deadpool projects are, so appealing to people, and why I love doing them. I just can do more, from my personal sense of humor and get away with a lot more. And I think that the reason Hasbro even wanted to talk to me in the first place was to do Deadpool stuff. I had done a lot of Deadpool covers, and my first project with Hasbro was the Deadpool Core motor scooter. Maybe you guys know that one.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, and we've since gone on to do a few other Deadpool projects since then.
So you're the Deadpool guy officially now, right? It's
I doubt it. Fortunately, they haven't pigeonholed me. I've done a lot of X-Men stuff. I had done the box art for the original X-Men animated series DVD boxes years ago, and
very
then
cool.
that is the gift that keeps on giving. People associate me with X-Men in the 90s, and I've done comics and toys related to that. And like I said, it's just like the gift that keeps on giving. I love to do those. They're what I grew up with. So they will always be like the definitive version of the X-Men or whatever that I always want to keep doing.
Yeah, that's the thing, especially with me. Growing up, and especially collecting toys in the '90s, the X-Men animated, Spider-Man animated, they're just the voices. You hear those voices when you watch, or you read anything, or even when a movie comes in a line that aligns with any of those. Those just resonate the most because they just had such an impact on young minds in general, and they were fun. They were fun to watch, and it's cool to see kind of a resurgence now. You're getting new toys from them. Maybe X-Men. They're talking about maybe doing another season of that old cartoon. So it's very cool
Right?
that everything's kind of coming back, hopefully in a fresh and new way, but that still captures that essence of when we were kids.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they really get behind the X-Men brand going forward. With the licensing back in Disney's hands, and that allowed to be a big part of the Marvel universe on film. Like, for sure they're planning a ton of stuff with those characters. Those were the hottest characters, and they had to kind of take a step back when Marvel no longer owned the film rights. But we're out of that place now, so
Yeah,
it's game on, for
yeah.
X-Men.
it's fun, and it's funny you mentioned that because for a large part of, let's say, some of the 80s, well into the 90s, the X-Men were like their flagship. You had Spider-Man, but X-Men was just everywhere, and that for Toy Biz especially, making all those action figures. I mean, they went deep, sort of of course, what Marvel Legends does now, but I mean, there was characters you still had to look up. You know what I mean? Like, especially as a kid, I'm like, who is this? Like, what? You know what I mean? So, and I love that Marvel Legends still carries that on, especially in like the most recent Deadpool wave, which you worked on for the boxes. You have Shikla, you got the shark, and
Yeah.
nobody really knows who. And especially I'm roped into that. As much as I think I know comics, sometimes I'm like, you got me. I don't know. Whatever. Sure, of course that's in the comics nowadays.
It's such an interesting experience for me because I actually do know each and every one of these deep dive D-list characters, and I have some fondness for them. If they've been in a comic I have read, I have sort of a photographic memory for it. I can remember those characters and they mean something to me.
Mm-hmm.
But then, that mean you wonder if that's true for other people. Do they have this kind of association? Do they even remember them at all? And
Yeah.
the most awesome thing about it is I'll put up my art for Black Tom Cassidy with no expectations, and then dozens of people will come out of the woodwork and go, "Oh, this is awesome. This is the figure I have been waiting for." I'm like, "No kidding. That's the figure you've been waiting for." I'm really delighted. But no matter how obscure the character is, there are dedicated fans who have
Oh
been
yeah.
waiting for that figure.
I
It's awesome.
I've been waiting for that Maverick figure. That's also part of the Deadpool wave
Yeah.
because of the old X-Men animated series with that one. It was like Weapon X lies in videotape. It was like that one episode where you had Wolverine, Maverick. What's her name? Sabretooth was in there too. I can't think of her name right now. Hasn't gotten a figure yet, is what I'm trying to get at. But we're one step closer to kind of getting all those characters back
Yeah.
again, and that's what's fun. And again, in keeping with what Marvel Legends does, a lot of people say to me like, "Oh, it's great, we're getting a new Spider-Man." I'm like, I like the more obscure stuff sometimes, even stuff I got to look up, like Iron Man 2020. I don't know if you've do you so
Yeah.
let's talk about this. Are you a huge toy collector? Did you always want to be in toys or collecting them, or how did you start in comic
Well,
books?
so the toy thing, yes. My thing, especially when I was a kid, was G1 Transformers. I
Oh, okay.
effing loved Transformers. It was super super exciting to me. I loved everything about it. I even had the chance when I was a kid. My family's from part of my family's from Japan, and we had visited. And my whole goal while I was there was to buy as many Transformers as possible because they had different ones and better ones, and it was like Christmas Day. So yeah, it was Transformers for me for sure. By the time the 90s rolled around and the Marvel toy explosion was happening, I was more into the comics, and the
Hmm.
art side of things. The artist in me was getting really excited about trying to draw comics. I think every boy I knew at the time, if you were a boy in the early 90s, you were part of a comic drawing circle and you were trying to copy either Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, or Todd McFarlane, one of the
That's
three.
right. Yeah.
uh,
Those were definitely the three.
yeah, it was amazing. Like I can't imagine that happening now, but like everybody I knew was buying Spawn #1, and it was like the thing we were talking about. And I wish that was the case today. Kids are very into Netflix or whatever
Yeah.
now, or Nintendo Switch. But at the time, it was comic books, and that was very formative for me.
It's funny to see, what kids are into now, especially going down like the toy route. I don't feel, and I've talked about this like when I've had other guests and stuff. Um, the sheer like I have to have this or the collectability, I don't think is all like there in modern day collectors or let's say new collectors. Let's say I've been doing this for God almost like 30 years now, and
Hmm.
it starts to grow and you realize how much stuff. But I think as a culture, we've moved forward in the sense of like a throwaway kind of situation where you pick and choose and it's great. You know what I mean? It kind of saves you on cash, especially. But it's more like, okay, maybe I'll get that one or this one. Whereas for me back in the day, it's like if you start, you gotta get every single one. You know what I mean?
Gotta catch them all. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I'm really curious. When I was a kid, there were only so many options of things to watch on TV,
Yeah.
and so it was, you could buy this toy line or that toy line. But now my kids, I have two little ones, they're growing up with basically whatever the heck they want to watch whenever they want to watch it, and they have maybe 15 to 20 different things that they've been exposed to. So what are they going to be nostalgic for? I
Yeah.
wonder. And
Peppa Pig. That's not.
well, some percentage of the audience will be, and some percentage won't even have heard of it. So if you're a
Yeah.
toy maker, when these kids are grown up and have money to spend on toys, I am dying to know what is going to be the brand. What are the brands that are going to be big to them?
Yeah. It's for, let's say, my little one. She's very much into Ghostbusters, probably due to my, just total fandom of Ghostbusters. But kids don't have that like deep connection. I mean, unless the movie or movies for different properties come out, then they see it and they go, okay. But I guess if you were to say like the more modern Star Wars, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know if that hit the core for kids to keep carrying on and go like, oh yeah, I liked, Kylo Ren and Rey and all those things. I think it maybe, but not what it did back in like '77. And all throughout the rest of the years. It's odd. It's. I wish the emphasis, I guess, would be more on story and kind of drawing more of that out instead of just like, here's the next movie, here's the next one, next one, next one. Oh, this did really fairly well. Let's do a cartoon, and then it just like ends. You know what I mean? That seems to be really what happens these days. So it's a shame. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's interesting to see what kids nowadays will be, what's going to be their retro line, in years from now. Like, oh man, I can't believe they're bringing that back. Or
I don't know. I'm doing my part though. I'm training them well. My kids know what Back to the Future and Transformers are.
oh, good man. Yeah. So you've in prior projects, you've worked with DC, Warner Brothers, video games, and now you're diving into Marvel Legends and stuff. Have you always been about, let's say, comic books or artwork in general, or did you have like it's something you kind of fell into, or how did you get started with that?
Well, I'm probably better known for Marvel stuff. I'm very recently starting to do DC things. I've done a few of these cereal box parody covers, like we talked about, and did some work for the animation arm of Warner Brothers recently that has yet to be shown publicly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd say most people would know from Marvel. Just to quickly correct that.
Mm-hmm.
But how did I fall into it? I guess it's I mentioned before I just really wanted to draw, and it was sort of like I was finding as a kid where to put that energy. So
Mm-hmm.
for a while it was Nintendo, like 8-bit Nintendo. I was absorbed with those characters, so I might be drawing Mega Man today or Mario the next day or whatever. I actually won a free copy of Super Mario 3 from the local cable company just for putting in so many submissions to their art contest.
That's awesome.
Just the sheer number of entries won me the contest, I think.
That game, you talk about like stuff that resonates to this day. Like,
Yeah,
whew, that nothing could top Mario 3.
that's your nostalgia, yeah. But there was really nowhere to go with that as a young kid because all the games at that time were made in Japan. There was no EA or American comic or video game dominance. There was nowhere to go. So, in looking around for other places to put my creativity, I think I found comics and fell in love with them in the 90s, and they were just getting really hot at that time. And so I think comics and that sensibility, that style of art really was formative. And so a big part of the way I work is traditional comic books for
Mm-hmm.
sure. But then what changed for me was at some point about 2000s or so, I got absorbed into the video game industry.
Mm.
The pay was a lot better. I was trying to support a brand new family at the time, and imagine this. I was a comic book penciler, and I was hired on to do video game concept art.
Mm.
Barely knew how to Photoshop color. So I had this trial by fire where I had to very quickly learn how to be a colorist too. That's not a thing in comics. In comics at the time, you were very separate, penciler, inker, colorist. But in games, that's not a thing. You have to fully create color artwork.
Hmm.
So after spending a few years in video games and becoming a lot more comfortable with coloring my own work and digitally painting, then I came back to comics just because my heart loved it, and I had this new set of tools. You still have to this day pencil inker, colorist, and comics, but you also have people like me who just do everything soup to nuts themselves. So
Hmm.
all my covers, everything I do is just me coloring on top of my own stuff, or sometimes just going direct to painted color. So there's always going to be that comic book sensibility in what I do, but it's also been completely changed by having gone through video games for 12 years.
That's interesting. The fact of the vibrancy and just like you have a really great energy, with your artwork. Like you said, putting some sort of like hidden element to it, like sexuality or comedy or whatever have you. It's just it comes alive, and I think that's what really works for seeing it on, let's say, Marvel Legends packaging. Um, when you walk through the toy aisle, a lot of times, like for instance, I had Tom Whalen. He does the artwork for the Power Rangers for Hasbro, and I told him the same thing. There's nothing better than associating like your comic book artwork with comic book action figures. It just makes it more of a complete package. And I think just with, let's say, Pirate Deadpool or Shikla or something, like seeing that artwork on the side really just pops. And even starting it off with the earliest one was the Vespa pool, right? Deadpool on the
Mm-hmm.
bike. That was like
Yeah.
your first one. I
First
just
thing.
I remember that artwork, especially when you're looking through like the other figures, it resonated more. It's more like, oh, you kind of take it for granted sometimes, but you're like, oh, this is a comic book action figure, and that kind of fell to the wayside. I feel like I know, Toy Biz used to do it a lot. They even used to put comic books in there, but I really just feel like seeing your artwork on these toys just gives you that whole complete, especially for kids that may not know, maybe that'll be like a way for them to kind of get into comic books and want to know more.
Well, thank you. I like to think that I bring some kind of authenticity
Yeah.
to the project. I did a lot of the comic stuff long before I did the toy stuff. So if it helps people feel like it's more of a real experience, you got a real comic artist, whatever, doing the art on the side, I'm glad to bring it. I certainly, a lot of my favorites, artists over the years have contributed, box art for these products, and I would always take notice, just because I knew who they were,
Hmm.
knew their work. When I spotted their work on the toy product, I'd be way more excited about the toy product. Guys like Frank Cho or Mike Deodato in particular, I remember seeing those on toys and thinking, oh, well, this makes it much more legit to me. So
Yeah.
if I can bring even a little bit of that to the products, certainly I guarantee I have a lot of fandom for these characters. I can bring that for sure. But if I can also bring
Yeah.
some authenticity, I'm glad to do it.
Well, that's cool. And yourself as being a fan and then doing this stuff, you can, like you said, include a lot of like hidden stuff that the fans, the obsessive, would go and go like, oh, yeah, he knows what he's doing. You know what I mean? So that's fun to see. In going from, comics to video games and then coming back with the new skills, how did you find yourself into, let's say, package design or getting with Hasbro and doing those the side panels?
Well, I don't know explicitly. I have been told. I've been told that some nice person within the Marvel organization recommended me for the job, and I would,
Ah.
I would, I would love to know who that was because I owe that person a beer. uh,
Well,
but I don't know. I don't
hey,
know.
that's awesome, right?
Yeah, no, I don't know what nice person that was, but a lot of times people find me just because of the internet at this point. People are
Hmm.
always asking me in interviews, how do I get a job? How do I get started? Right? A lot of enthusiastic young kids coming up, they want to know how to get started.
Yeah.
And so the reality is it's easier now to get started than it was before because you have the internet. You can be on ArtStation, you can be on Instagram, and if your work is good, you kind of automatically start forming a following, and then art directors looking around for talent, they find you, and you kind of didn't even have to do anything. You just have to be there visibly.
Yeah. The beauty of social media, right?
Right. Now, the problem with that is the double-edged sword there is that you are competing with literally the entire world. Anyone who
Yeah.
can access the internet has that same opportunity. So then the problem is, although you are have greater exposure, it's easier. You don't have to like physically go to comic conventions and show paper portfolios anymore like I used to. You do have to compete with everybody else. So that means it's a meritocracy now where you just have to be good. Yeah.
Yeah. That's always like the best way to look at it. It's like, how did you start? You just got to be good at what you do, and people have to like your artwork, which I'm safe to assume. I think people definitely do. When you're walking down the toy aisle and you
Yeah.
see the new, Age of Apocalypse wave, and by the way, that I had to save that box art. That was, I think I remember telling you, I was like, I had to cut that out and just. I save certain ones every once in a while, but I really liked Morph. You know what I mean? Like, even
Yeah.
though that's not my ideal, more X-Men animated series, with the leather jacket and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
there's, like I said, it's a fun comic book element to put, around your figures on a display or something like that, and it just adds to the collection, especially years from now. I'll look at all my hoarding of various things I've cut out of packaging and go like, oh yeah, I remember that wave. And
Well,
but yeah,
now that you mention it, like one thing that Hasbro is really, really good at, I don't know if people know this, but their art directors are really, really good. And
hmm
what they do is depending on the figure, they will cast different artists with different styles to do different things that are specifically geared for that character. So what I mean is, in the case of like the Age of Apocalypse figures, um, what they wanted is something very evocative of like the Joe Madureira style. That was, he was the guy that did the covers
hmm
for that line, and some of the issues around it, did a lot of the character designs. So it made a lot of sense on those figures to approach it with a straight up line art comic book Joe Mad influenced style with liquid style coloring. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, there was a coloring house called Liquid at the time that had a very distinctive way of working with this sort of colorful bounce light thing. So we recreated that look on purpose for that specific line. And then you'll go on to the next project and it'll be a completely different style because the vibe is different. So like Punisher Motorcycle, for example,
yes.
gritty toothbrush splatter, blacks everywhere, totally different aesthetic. But fortunately, having gone through the video game machine, I learned how to do different styles, and there you go.
So you're saying we haven't really seen the complete packaging yet. We think there's a Punisher Kill Crew Legendary Riders coming. I know some things have been leaked. We did see some of it at Toy Fair, but are you saying that you may have worked on the packaging? We might be seeing your artwork again?
Yeah, it's out there. I mean, like if people took pictures from Toy Fair, got a shot of that side panel. I don't know if anyone did. Some people were really up on getting really great pictures of the Age of Apocalypse line.
Yeah,
Punisher one, I don't think anyone quite got that, but it's out there, and I'm very glad to tell you I did do the art for that. Won't post it
amazing.
until Hasbro reveals it in full, but it's coming.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's exciting, and like we had talked about, previously. That's an interesting, again, in talking about like the style and kind of changing it up, going from a more fun comedic sense of Deadpool and then a grimy, gritty sort of thing for Punisher. So it's cool to see that your style fits just an entire bevy of different emotions and stuff throughout the Marvel universe.
I like to try. It's tricky, coming from the game stuff, like I mentioned, I used to think of it as sort of a benefit to be able to draw on all these different styles. You do one video game and it's different from the next, so you have to alter the way it looks, right?
hmm
Not every video game can have the same style on the box art or the key art, as they call it. But with comics, it's kind of the opposite, and I found myself realizing that kind of chameleon skill was actually a detriment in the world of comics.
hmm
Because with comics, what you want to do is build a brand. People have to be able to look at your covers and your signature and go, oh yeah, it's the new one from David Nakayama, and it can't look different one from the next, or it'll just be confusing to people.
Yeah.
So I think it's a benefit in toys, and I think it's a detriment in comics. So in comics, I try to stick to more of a consistent style.
Hmm. That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, it's funny how, a lot of times, even, back in the 80s, 90s, I'll see a certain thing. I go, is that their work? It kind of became sometimes confusing, whereas some artists, they'd tell them like, hey, can you recreate their style? Or, you know what I mean? And it was more like, wait, is this the person drawing this? Or is this somebody else trying to like mimic their style? So
Yeah.
it's always interesting in the world of comics. What abouts or comic book wise are you a fan of these days? Which ones are you reading, or what's the hot ticket?
Let's see. That's a good question. I bounce around a lot. I'm catching up on the graphic novels of The Wild Storm right now. It's a Warren
Mm.
Ellis, John Davis Hunt book that sort of recontextualizes all of the characters from Wildstorm. So that'd be like Gen 13 and Stormwatch and Wildcats, all that good stuff. The Authority. I'm finally finishing that. It's wonderful. I also do a lot of collecting based on art and
Hmm.
covers. I obviously think a lot about covers, and maybe I justify it a little bit that it's market research, but at the end of the day, it's just
It's
it's
a
just I
tax
like
write-off. So, yeah, don't worry
I
about it.
I love J. Scott Campbell. I love Adam Hughes. If they do anything at all, I'm gonna buy it. Like my store knows at this point. I don't even have to tell them. Like if there's a cover from one of those guys, they're gonna pull it for me. uh, so
How about in terms of toys? What's did you like? Did you always start collecting? Let's say with Transformers, did it get hot and heavy? As you kept
yeah.
getting older, did it kind of take a break here and there? Or
I after I got into high school, I basically didn't get any toys anymore. Like it was
Mhm.
more into the comics and art. So I didn't really get many more toys. And then as when you have a family and you have close, you don't have so much space to store everything or shelves to display anything.
Yeah.
I basically just didn't buy anything for myself for a really, really long time. And now, because of the Hasbro experience, I have all these products that I'm so proud of, and it's more become like I want to just display some of them. They
Yeah.
exist, and they Hasbro's done such a good job creating these beautiful packages. They look great. I just want to have shelves for the first time in a long time and put them up on it. But that hadn't been the case throughout, the last 15 years I was doing comics. It wasn't like I was posting my own work on my walls or anything like that. It's kind of a new thing.
Yeah, and kind of like going back to what I was saying earlier is like walking through the toy aisle, like how does that feel? You're like, oh man, there's my work. I mean, I have always thought like that would be just the coolest thing ever is to know that kids, collectors, whomever, they're buying the toys that you worked on. That's got to be an
Oh my
amazing
gosh.
feeling.
It absolutely is. And I'll tell you, like, the absolute best part for me is if we go to Target and, the Squirrel Girl motor scooter has shown up, I get to say to my kids, look, kids, I drew that. And I don't know if it means anything to them, but it's really exciting to be able to say
Yeah.
it.
Well, even like younger, as they get older, they're gonna look back and go like, my dad did some cool stuff. Like he was packaged and all that. We had the toys. Like don't worry. If they don't get it now, they definitely will, because that's just
uh,
awesome.
they definitely don't get it right now. They definitely don't care even a little bit, but I hope you're right.
Kids today, you know what I mean? They don't even have stuff they're looking forward to for retro stuff and everything else. No, for
Those
let's
damn kids.
right.
Harassing kids.
They're always asking for food. It's like the worst thing. No. For like recent reveals, in terms of like let's say Deadpool, any thoughts on that new talking Deadpool head,
Oh my gosh,
that
it's the
motorized thing?
best. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm tempted to get it, even though I didn't work on it at all. Uh,
Yeah,
it's so different and interesting, and like there's nothing else like that that's ever been there. And 600 lines of dialogue. It's incredible. They made a winner there. It's really cool. I hope people support it.
yeah, I agree. I know it's been a lot of back and forth. I think a lot of people are like, why? That's like the main question. Like I wasn't asking for this, but at the same time, it's like think of it in terms of, yeah, they're going to continuously make action figures. I'm not a huge fan of like helmets and buying all like the quote unquote like cosplay type stuff. But I did get that big Infinity Gauntlet, that makes noises and all that kind of stuff. So I think in terms of having an interesting piece, if you don't have maybe you're like the casual collector, or something like that, I think that's a perfect gift even for someone you're sick of buying your significant other action figures. You don't know what to get them. A talking Deadpool head. There you go.
It's definitely not a casual purchase. It's 99, retails for 99, so it's going to be more like like you say, the Infinity Gauntlet collector.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to be a dedicated fan to want it, but I am that fan. That is for me. I really, really like the idea that they do these. Action figures are one thing. They look cool. You can play with them, but this is something completely different. So I'm just hopefully it does well.
I'm curious to see. They did this amazing commercial for it. I don't know if you saw it, but
I did. It's great.
Yeah, that is what I like to see. Even let's say it's not a product for me it's nice to see that they put a lot into this. The guy sitting on the couch. It was very much Deadpool. I think they captured what Deadpool should be. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, why isn't it Ryan Reynolds' voice?" I'm like, well, because Ryan Reynolds is expensive. He has his own gin company, for God's sake. No, but it's a good way to kind of tie in a lot of different, I think, collecting mentalities. And I'm sitting here even going like this. Well, it wouldn't be such a bad thing. It'd be kind of funny. You know what I mean? But it's one of those where I need to kind of see it up close and personal before I make any final decisions. Because, as they show in the commercial, it may not be the same. So we'll have to see. But
I got to say, like, the commercial's wonderful, but, like, the fact that it moves is unbelievable. It's like, that's they've gone the extra mile. Like, it didn't necessarily have to move. They could have just had, it just sits there, a piece of plastic, and the selling point is that it says the lines. Like, that would have been enough. But the fact that they actually animated it and make the neck move and the eyes move, that's phenomenal. That's just the extra investment that they put in there. And by the way, 600 lines is incredible. Like, those two things are the things that make me want to own it.
That's not even Furby. Furby wasn't even close to 600 lines.
That was definitely never my bag.
Yeah, right. The like you're saying, in terms of it moving around, I mean, it works to the effect of like Deadpool was just beheaded, decapitated, and he's talking to you. It's not like a totally goofy thing. It's like, well, he's known to do it in comics. It does work, So I gotta hand it to him. Plus, they did a full-on 1-800 number you could call, and you got messages from the head of Deadpool. So, as a complete marketing strategy, well done, Hasbro, on that one.
The only way it could be better for me is if I could have drawn something for the box.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, you would have just completely added to it, but the way that the box is kind of drawn all over, it's very much. It's like they nailed the aspect of Deadpool. It's a wacky, crazy zaniness. I love that it says 18 plus. So you're not producing a Deadpool that's kind of had to be toned down. I'm curious to see what they're going to go with that route. But they're not making it for kids. This is for the adults and people of Deadpool fans.
I'm actually kind of joking about the box art. I think they did it right because the product here is that it is an actual head that's actually there, and so a photo of the product is really all you need in that case. It doesn't need an additional cartoon on the side to communicate what that product is. So I get it.
Maybe they could have you do like an instructional thing. You know what I mean? Some kind of funny artwork that would walk you through the steps of setting up Deadpool's own head. I don't know. Totally spitballing. But
there's been no shortage of cool Deadpool products that I have been involved with. They did a 90s retro one, and here's Hasbro being awesome at the art direction again. They actually have it so that when you flip the card over, there's the reverse image of Deadpool's shiny ass.
Yeah.
So, you have him, sort of just posing as normal on the front. You flip it around, there's his butt.
That's what the retro card that's what they nail sometimes is especially with Legends. I just said this a couple days ago, but with Legends you can tell they have a lot of fun. They try to think outside the box and go like, let's have Deadpool kicking Madcap's head like in the packaging. You know what I mean? Or Deadpool boxers looks like he's reclining on a bed with the torso of Sauron, or or Sauron. Right. So I like it when it's not just the same old. It's more of like a treat, or you can just tell they sat back and they're like, oh, screw it, let's just do something weird for the fans.
Right, and it's I mean, we've kind of made the point already, but to make it further, they commissioned me twice. You got to understand, they put their money where their mouth is. It's not just like, this is just some little throwaway joke. No, they went out of their way to hire me to do the backside of the art. So that's the commitment, right? I'm trying to explain how amazing and committed Hasbro art direction is at making the best possible product.
Yeah. Well, you can definitely say that. I mean, they're doing well. They own pretty much every property I could think of for the most part. Power Rangers, Ghostbusters. Have you ever been a fan of those? Collected those or anything like that?
Personally, no. I was a fan of the movies for sure. I never did buy the toys for some of those things. I was a huge Transformers fan.
Yeah.
I am trying to step around it a little bit. Stay tuned for future announcements.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we won't go there, but that's a nice little tease. Right on. I will say this because I wanted to get into Transformers. I was looking for a good segue, but there is a rumor. Again, it's like one of those like Punisher kind of leaked the images and such. It's basically a dead Optimus Prime.
Whoa.
And when I saw this, I brought back all of the Transformer movie feelings when you saw that thing. Did you see the movie in theaters, or was it later like a VHS? Were you a fan of it?
Come on, man. Who are you talking to here? I have at least 3 copies of that film. I have the Chinese bootleg version. I have the 25th anniversary version. I have shown it to my kids. Just the other day, we were talking in the car about this freaking soundtrack on that movie. Because my son loves 80s music. I'm trying to explain to him how special the soundtrack was, and how weird it was that it was even in there.
You were rocking the dad thing, by the way. You're getting him hooked on Stan Bush and everything early.
Yes.
He's going to be they're going to go like this. My dad was the coolest. He did packaging. He showed me Transformers the movie. I got traumatized at an early age by Optimus' death.
I love this stuff. I want nothing more than to share it and for them to understand how cool it is. We were just watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit, last night.
Oh, okay, cool.
For example, but going back to Transformers, I consider that the finest Transformers movie by a country mile.
Oh yeah.
And not only is the animation great, I think the story is great. I think they sort of accidentally backed into surprising emotional storytelling. A lot of the things that happen in that movie are based on trying to get a new toy line out. But, you as a young tween or whatever watching that film, as I was not prepared for anything that happened. Ironhide was like my favorite, was one of my first toys that I ever owned. And then he's casually killed like in a throwaway moment. And my heart is breaking. And then 5 minutes later, Optimus Prime has the most devastating death I think you could think of on film.
Yeah.
So I know nothing about any toy plans for that, but that's a critical moment that I will never forget.
Yeah. That's we'll just say, and we'll keep it in passing, but yeah, for whatever, if there's such a toy coming out, the scarring, the emotional scarring has all come back after that one image that I saw, especially, everyone always, a friend of mine, he compares it to, it's like a Transformer snuff film at the beginning, you know what I mean? Like Megatron tears through like Ratchet, and
it's just so unexpectedly cool because you've watched at this point, I think before the movie happened, there were several seasons, 3, 4, 5 seasons, whatever, before the movie came out. And the Decepticons are completely ineffectual, the way that Cobra is ineffectual. No one ever lands a shot. No one ever gets hurt. no one ever dies for sure. And then all of a sudden, the rules are completely changed when the movie happens, and there's death very casually right from the beginning, and you kind of don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. No one's safe, and all the kid gloves are off. So it's beautiful in that way. You just don't know. Yeah.
That was like the growing up moment when you saw it. You're like, oh, well, I guess I have to move on with my life now that all my friends are dead.
Well,
and I think,
very shortly after the TV show did do the return of Transformers or of Optimus Prime, and they canonically brought him back, and that was very cathartic. I thought it was a well done piece of storytelling that stood on its own. Marv Wolfman, I believe, wrote the episodes, and this is the author responsible for Crisis on Infinite Earths as well. So he has quite a little track record of good storytelling. But the point I'm making is they did a canonically good return of Optimus. So that was good. That was healing for me.
Yeah, right. There's something about the old G1, especially, the toys. Nowadays, I say this a lot. I don't, people are always, oh, they're expensive, the Siege and the Earthrise. And I'm like, imagine designing that. Where do you start? Not only having it be a robot, have it be painted, move. I mean, the articulation has gone through the roof. But then it transforms into a plane, and it looks like a plane. You know what I mean? Like, the engineering on that alone, it just blows my mind to see, where we've come from.
I'm sure you've seen the Toys That Made Us, and they go through it in detail. The genius of these Japanese creators at that time, they're literally light years ahead of most other toy makers in a world of their own. When the Americans tried to create new ones, they just were not prepared, and they kind of sucked. Certainly it's come around since then. I believe the Americans have caught up and they know how to do it now. But just how far ahead those Japanese engineers were at the time is the story to me. That's incredible.
Yeah, and that's the best thing about the Toys That Made Us, is that they give you that insight that it was kind of always like you're wondering about. You know what I mean? Like, and them detailing it out. It starts with like on paper, and then they work with like cardboard and everything. I'm like, the scaling was always off, but dang, they always came out with great and cool looking toys, and then to look at it from nowadays, it's just like, were you a big fan of Beast Wars ever? Was that ever your thing?
That one passed me by. By then I was, onto the comic stuff, and I remember being sort of aware of it, but kind of thinking, well, they turn into animals? That's kind of weird, right? Like, that was my original thought.
That was always the problem I had. I didn't get it. Even as a kid, I was like, why is Optimus Prime a gorilla? I don't understand. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it totally wasn't my thing. Yeah, exactly. And there are so many people that love it. You know what I mean? It turned into a huge thing for Transformers back in the day. But I remember when they finally went back to, cars and planes and all that kind of stuff, I was like, all right, you got me back. I'm back. What are we doing?
Weirdly, if they were to make some film or whatever based on Beast Wars, I'd go. I'm not opposed to it.
I think, I agree with you. I think that, with what the Michael Bay films kind of turned into, I did really like the Bumblebee movie. I think that if that would have come out in the 80s, that would have been like just gangbusters. But I think it would be a nice different spin just to kind of see it. I'm open. Maybe, hey, now you'll get me for Beast Wars and things like that if you did like a cool movie or something. But are you looking forward to the Netflix Siege show that's coming out, or War for Cybertron, I should say?
Yeah, I'm optimistic about that. I loved Bumblebee. I love what I'm hearing. Just rumors in the Hollywood blogs about what they're working on next. It seems like if Bumblebee's any indication of where they're going, that is the right way to go.
I think so. Yeah, it's you look at the Michael Bay films and you think, okay, good experiment. We can see what, I guess for what I would want to see, it just didn't work. Bumblebee pretty much nailed it. I mean, that opening Cybertron scene, and then subsequently,
crap.
That was like, that is exactly what I want to see Optimus Prime looks like
Yeah.
Optimus Prime, good job.
Yeah, I'll take a whole movie of that, please. But like,
Yeah,
I get that that might be expensive or whatever. You know, you need some human component to it too. So Bumblebee
yeah.
was a good mashup of the two ideas.
Yeah, I think it was a sweet movie. It reminded me of like E.T., very Spielberg-ish without being too, in either direction of like, the director. Um, it just worked. I mean, I guess that's the best way to
Yep.
say it. And the minor characters of Bumblebee, the two robots, you only had those. You had a lot of human stuff, but it worked in support of the script. It wasn't like there for shock value,
No.
much like the Dinobots and the other movies.
Right. The only strange decision for me is like Bumblebee is a character who like doesn't really talk. you know?
I
And
think
so
yeah, I've honestly never liked that. I think that's bizarre. Even watching it with a little one in the family, they're like, does Bumblebee never talk in like the original Transformers? I'm like,
right.
no, he always talks.
Like don't get me wrong, like he's a relatable character. He looks cool on screen, but he's not my favorite Transformer, Like can I get one that's focused on Optimus?
Yeah, exactly. I remember even watching the trailer. It turned out to be a different one, but I was like, oh my god, they put stars like that star screen. That looks like, it turned out it was a different Decepticon. But those, with Megatron and all the other ones from the different movies, those two, what was it, like Shatterstar? I don't remember their names, but they were menacing. I was like, oh, these are good. These are good villains for this
Yep.
movie. Like they're
Yep.
triple changers. They can do whatever they want, and they used the military, and it was awesome. So
Yep, no complaints. I love that movie. It's the right way to go.
yeah, and like you said, of what is kind of going around Hollywood and what they want to do, um, I think we're finally going to get some good stuff coming, for that the fans have always wanted to see. So that would be cool. In terms of the Netflix stuff, again, I'm like you. I'm just hoping it's good. It's not necessarily the kind of animation that I typically like, but I have high hopes for it. I love the toy line, so I'm interested to see, especially those Walmart Netflix figures that they've been doing. Still got to get a few more of those, but
Yeah, I have a lot of love for Transformers as a brand. Love to work on it more. There have been a couple of near misses in my career where a project almost materialized and then it didn't. So I have yet to draw a for real Transformers comic book cover. And I would love to do more with the toys if that's possible in the future.
yeah.
Who knows? But the love is there for sure.
Excellent. In terms of coming soon projects, anything that you can talk about or want to talk about for upcoming stuff, or hints or anything else like that?
Well,
Without going too far, of course.
sure, yeah. Well, fortunately, in the world of toys, there are a few projects that are already complete and in the hopper and just waiting to be announced. So I'm really excited about that. Every single one of them is really exciting.
Mhm.
There's really nothing I can say until they announce it, but
Of course, yeah.
each one of them is very exciting. Like they will each one of them be, the post of the year, if not, the month. Each one is so exciting. I just wish I could say more.
No, I
Um,
like a good tease like that. It
yeah,
gets people's brains going in every which direction. So
yeah. There,
no, that's excellent.
there's no line yet. The last line that I worked on was Deadpool. That's just about to ship.
Mhm.
The next ones coming are more one and two characters at a time situation, but they're bigger characters maybe.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so we'll see. We'll see.
That's a good tease. That right on. Well, I'm looking forward to, like talking about the Kill Crew Punisher. You know what I mean, like that. I'm looking
Yeah.
when you get these in hand, and some people even have the new Deadpool wave already. But when you
Yeah.
post
How
stuff
does
on
that
your
happen?
Insta,
How do some people get the thing so far in advance like that?
it's various ways. Maybe you know a guy, maybe you know a guy that owns like a comic book shop. There's eBay, Mercari, certain sellers on there will get them early. Yeah, you're gonna pay out the nose for them.
Right.
But that's generally the way. And the Deadpool wave, with everything that's kind of happened with, let's say, COVID, it's kind of thrown this entire year off. But they're slated for around July, August. I try to give like a 3-month window. You never know. Sometimes they show up super early, and sometimes it take a little bit longer. And as I've been kind of seeing the trend of late, in the beginning of the year, things were coming out pretty much on schedule, was largely unaffected. But as we've kind of gone the next couple months into the year, I've noticed certain things where this was slated for June, now maybe July, so
Right.
that's basically the long and short of it. But I'm one of those where I really still like to go into the store and do the work and find them myself. It's a heck of a lot easier to pre-order them or get them, online some way, some shape or form. And yeah, sometimes you do get them shipped early, which is always nice. But
it's been interesting. Like the one that's supposed to be on the shelves right now is Avengers Gamerverse.
Yeah.
And when I was at my local Target the other day, they had like one like Captain America figure left, but none of the ones that I worked on. So I pre-ordered it. I have them on my shelf, thank God. But I haven't had that experience yet where I went to a store and saw any of those yet on a shelf.
I found one or two about probably a month and a half, 2 months ago now. And just this past weekend, I actually found Rage from that line. So, and that is one that I've been looking forward to because I'm always a big fan of characters. They made him in like the 3 3/4 inch, but they never done it more in like a 6 inch. I don't even think they had it in Do Toy Biz. I'm not sure. I don't think so, but or at least I don't have it. But it's fun to get these new characters and hear that you worked on it. That's awesome. The Gamerverse one is interesting wave. I like that they kind of split it up between comic books and video games because there's not really any movies out right now. So Hasbro's always got a plan.
They do. It's always interesting. No complaints here.
Yeah. I guess you could say, I know we try to keep it, around an hour or so, and I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time, but I do appreciate you being here. Is there anything else that you want to cover or talk about before we kind of wrap things up?
Nope, you're right. It's probably about time to go feed those little guys who are waiting on me. But come back another time if you want to talk some more. And,
definitely. Yeah.
There's definitely lots more coming.
Excellent. No, I would love to have you on again. Maybe when those more of those figures come out, we can talk more about them, go over each one. I know just a lot of people love to hear the inner works of toys and everything else, the artists behind the stuff. So I very much appreciate you taking the time today. This has been a blast.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Like I said, you want to talk about toys? Yes, that's fun.
Perfect. This is perfect. Whereabouts can people find you on social media? And I can put links and everything. I'll put your website and everything else down below.
That'd be great. I'm really easy to find at David Nakayama is my handle on both Instagram and Twitter. I am on Facebook too, but it's not my primary. And then if the hardcore art types are out there, I'm on ArtStation under my own name as well.
Excellent. I got to say, even following you, knowing your work on Instagram especially, you're very engaging, and you're Hasbro posts something, you're right there. So it's a nice cohesive between brand, company, artists, everything. So I do appreciate that. That's one thing I try to bring, when talking about toys. So it's awesome to see other people doing it as well.
Thank you. Yeah, no, Instagram for sure it's kind of like a mini Comic-Con. You'll people come and right away they'll just show up and want to talk about the latest thing and what else am I going to do? Of course, I love responding. I try to be very available to anyone who does. They're showing me some love for the product. At least I can do is give them answers to their questions and thank them for being there. So yeah, I like that sort of good-natured exchange that happens on Instagram.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. I'm very jealous that you live in Hawaii, but I'll let you get back to the Hawaii experience. And we'll definitely have you on again soon, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.